a real life story, which is really encouraging for me. One, just imagine you were the president.
He's trying more and more to act like the son.
You're already the president. She manages to capture the attention of the parents.
Trying to escape. I mean, you're just like, I wish I could just stop, but just keep going and going and going. Hi guys, so this is God's Beloved 101. So excited once again to be speaking to you, and today we're going to be talking about something that you might want to term as controversial, or maybe not, it depends. But we're going to be talking about entitlement and how to deal with entitlement. Where does entitlement come from? And I think one thing that has also led me to be inspired to think about this was I heard a story on radio the other day where there was a guy who had been supported by a sibling of his since he was quite young, and then the sibling put him through school, and then they even went on ahead to go to varsity, I think, and this sibling was supporting him until the time when this sibling says, I want to go out of the country. And then this guy, the other sibling was like, no, I think for you to go, before you go out of the country, you need to fulfill 1 to 3 conditions first before we can say you're fit to go. And then this guy was actually unhappy with those conditions and unhappy that this sibling had said no, and decided to kill himself. And I was so surprised because I was just like, oh my gosh, after everything that the sibling had done for the other sibling, and then after all those sacrifices, this guy decides to kill himself. And actually he left a note and he was saying, I blame the sibling for my demise. And for me, I just felt it was really heartbreaking because it led me to realize that this guy was, number one, very entitled to thinking he deserved something that he didn't actually deserve. That's number one. And number two, he was also very bitter. He had grown to become a very bitter person, and because of his entitlement, I think when you're entitled, you also tend to think you're being shortchanged or someone is cheating you. And because he felt cheated, he decided that he was going to get rid of and like literally give up on his own life, and he did just that. And so I think I'll start by just illustrating where does an entitlement come from. And some people would argue that in certain instances, it's just a matter of people just being used to having things done for them. And then in other instances, and I think that's the one side that I'll also really delve into, it comes from thinking that I deserve to receive 1, 2, 3 things because I have done something right or because I have done this correctly. So when I think some few months back, I remember receiving this question from someone who was saying, I've noticed that sometimes in church you tend to notice these people that are doing a lot, and by a lot I mean they're so committed. They are there every service. They do everything right. They seem to be putting in their tithes. They seem to be serving in church all the time. They are there before everyone else. They're the last person to leave the church. They do all of these amazing things that you're just thinking, oh my gosh, this person is just too committed. But this person was asking that, but why does it look like, although they're so prayerful, although they're doing all these things right, their life doesn't seem to show that it's a life that is being blessed, or it doesn't show that they're receiving any rewards for all this hard work that they're doing. And I remember just going to think about that. Yeah, sometimes you do have people that are doing a lot more than these other people, but then you find that these other people sometimes seem to be more blessed or looking better than those that are doing the most, those that are working harder for God. And so I'll just dive right into this first, and it really also started to answer those questions for me. And it says, this is Galatians chapter 5, and I'll just start from verse 1 so that we have context. And it says, it was for this freedom that Christ set us free, completely liberating us, is the Amplified Version. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery which you once removed. Notice, it is I, Paul, who tells you that if you receive circumcision as a supposed requirement of salvation, Christ will be of no benefit to you, for you will lack the faith in Christ that is necessary for salvation. Verse 3. Once more, so let me affirm to every man who receives circumcision as a supposed requirement of salvation, that he is under obligation and required to keep the whole law. You, verse 4, you have been served from Christ if you seek to be justified, that is, declared free of the guilt of sin and its penalty, and placed in right standing with God through the law. You have fallen from grace, for you have lost your grasp on God's unmerited favor and blessing. So I think it's the KJV version. It says, for now Christ is made of no effect to those that are under the law, for you have fallen from grace. So I think for me, just that part is the one that started to speak to me, that, sometimes we have Christians who don't seem to have Christ in their life. Their life doesn't reflect any effects of Christ whatsoever. And this guy is coming to answer that very question, that, why does it look like Christ is of no effect in our lives? Why does it look like Christ has no impact, no benefit to our lives? And he's saying, the moment you go and put yourself under the law, where you're trying to get things by performing, where you're trying to earn your things by doing something so that you can get that, then Christ is made of no effect. So now we come to the member of the church that is doing everything right, going to church, serving, doing everything. You can count everything, and then you're saying, oh my gosh, this person deserves everything from God. And then you find that instead they don't seem to be receiving much. And I was just wondering, how does it come to this point? And this guy is saying, when you're under the law, that's your reward. Christ is made of no effect in your life. And a lot of the times our temptation is to say, there must be sin. There must be sin. It's because of sin that Christ is of no effect. But no, grace is here to give us unmerited favor. Grace is here to offer us those things that we would never deserve by what we did. And it's just there to offer it to us for free of charge, because of what Christ has done. So now Christ becomes of effect to those that are under grace, and of no effect to those that are under the law. Now let's backtrack and then go back again to this person that's in church. I'll keep using this example because it was something that I was really thinking about. And we come to the thought that, how do you judge that this person has not received the benefits that are due to them? How does one become entitled to think that there are benefits that they're supposed to be receiving that they're not receiving? And I was really looking at this. I mean, I was quite liberated when I went and they said that for the law, for the law, when it comes, it sets a bar this high, right? So when I myself compare myself to that bar that's very high, I normally find that I can't meet it. So how do people then continue to advocate that let's keep the law, let's keep the law? You are not keeping the law, you should be keeping the law, you're supposed to be keeping the law. So we have people like that even today that keep on saying the law is the law and it must be kept. But then when you actually dig deeper into their lives, you find that they themselves are failing. They themselves are failing. And where do I find this from? When you look at I think in the Gospels, there was a story. I'm not going to read it. You can look for it and read it later. But there was a story where they were speaking about a woman that was caught in adultery while Jesus was still on earth. And then they brought this woman to Jesus and they said, Moses said that people who commit adultery should be stoned. What do you say? And then Jesus went on to say, if you, the one who has come to uphold the law of Moses, right? And it was a group of people that have come and they're saying, we want to uphold the law. We want the law of Moses to be kept. It must be kept, and we're here to uphold it. We're here to, stand for it and make sure it's upheld, even in this woman's life. Why was she caught doing that? And I can just imagine even ourselves when we have heard a sister who's been caught in a compromising position as she was, and we just like, have you heard about sister so and so? And imagine that she was going to keep on coming to church and coming like that, and that we should have people who are doing such things in our midst. I can just hear even in today's world when we have those kinds of judgment towards other people. And then these guys, they went to Jesus, and Jesus says, "He who has no sin amongst you, let that person cast the first stone." And the way the law was turned, it was like all along they were casting their beams on this lady and saying, the law is saying this. And then Jesus just turned the beam and made it face them. And the moment that beam was faced to each and every one of them, it says they all left one by one, starting with the eldest to the youngest. And they left. Why? Much as they were saying that the law should be kept, this is what the law says. None of them were keeping it. None of them were keeping it. So we go back to entitlement. Entitlement, we said it comes from thinking that I have done something right, hence I deserve this. This lady or this man that we're saying is a devout Christian. We know every good deed that they're doing, they do the most, they come first, they do that. At the end of the day, when you put them against the bar of the law and you say, he who has no sin, let him cast the first stone. None of them, all those Pharisees, those Sadducees, it says they all left until Jesus says to the woman, where are those that accuse you? And she says, none left. No one was there. Just to cast that first one. So what does this say to us today? When we start to feel entitlement, when we start to feel that we are supposed to be receiving that benefit or we deserve this blessing, it comes from thinking that we have done something right. But in actual fact, it's because all the while it's because we're comparing ourselves with the next person. All the while we're saying, I deserve this, is because I'm comparing myself to the woman caught in adultery. She has been caught. Oh my gosh, what a disgrace. What an embarrassment. So now, versus her who's been caught and me who has not been caught in any compromising position, I find myself and I feel like I am higher or I'm at a higher level than she is. She was even more careless to do it with someone with whom she would be caught. So now I feel like I'm at a higher position. And so now I esteem myself as though I am better than her. So instead of comparing myself back to the law, the standard that God had set, which is the highest bar, I'm saying, oh, I've now set myself a new bar, which is the next person. Because it says, a man of God says, you have to lie in order to convince people you got it, you got it together when you're under the law. You've got to lie. So these guys, they were all faking it. They were all saying, I'm trying, look at me. I am so zealous about the law. But when it came time now to say, let us examine you. If you have no sin, cast the first stone, just the first one. There was no one found left there. Which means in all our good works, in all the things that we say we're doing, in all our boastings to say, I am better than so and so, at the end of the day, God is not looking at you and saying, since you are doing better than John or since you're doing better than Peter, let us reward you for that. No, God is saying, keep the whole law, then you'll be blessed. If you can't keep the whole law, then you're under the curse. So a lot of the times, God has already done exceedingly above. He has blessed us with so many blessings that we don't deserve already. Just like that young man who's being taken care of by his sibling. In his head, it's as if it's a right for your sibling to care for you, and yet the sibling is actually sacrificing, going out of their way to assist you. But you, because you have become so used to these benefits, you start to take them for granted and you start to think it's your right, and yet it's a privilege because they had no obligation to do that in the first place. So just like God today, he has no obligation to care for people because when it comes to keeping the law with that bar so high, he is justified if he's going to judge us all because none of us have been able to keep it. So now every little thing, every good thing that is happening, even the little things that are happening in our lives, the fact that we're not burning in hell already, the fact that sulfur has not yet fallen on the earth already, it's already a bigger blessing, a greater blessing, a great grace show already, that we're supposed to be grateful. We're supposed to be crying in gratitude for in thanksgiving for those blessings that we've gotten that we don't deserve. But instead, we don't see that we've been given grace, because in our heads we're saying, I deserve good things. I deserve for the sun to rise and the sun to set at the right time. I deserve a family. I deserve, in fact, the fact that you've not given me what I want and what I have been asking for. I've been asking for a child, and yet this new couple that just got in, that is committing adultery, or they committed adultery, yet they've been blessed with twins, and yet I am doing everything right. I have been coming to church every Sunday. I have been serving for so many years, and yet I have asked for a child, and you've not given me. And yet I've asked for you to grow my company, and you've not done it. I want this. I must have it. But you're not able to see the rest of the good things that God has already done for you that you don't deserve. But because in your head you're full of that entitlement, that thinking that I am supposed to receive this because I've done this right. In your head you're thinking you deserve that blessing. You deserve the very thing that you want. So your eyes are blinded to every other good thing that God has been doing for you without you even asking sometimes. So you're so absorbed in what you have done than what God has done for you. So you're not grateful anymore, no matter how much he does, no matter what the sibling is doing, even if it's for their own good. This guy was not able to see it anymore, and he was just concerned about what he wanted, which was send me overseas, pay for me to go. So instead he kills himself and blames the very person who's been taking care of him, and says, it is your fault that I'm in this state, that I've decided to commit suicide. And just imagine the pain that the sibling must have been in. And it was just really heartbreaking. So, again, let's come to another great story of the prodigal son. We have the prodigal son that runs, and the prodigal son that also remained in the household. And it says this prodigal son, he went and spent the father's wealth with prostitutes and all that stuff. And then there's the guy who was left at home, who was saying, oh, father, I have been doing all these things. And it says, when the prodigal son came back, it says this guy was angry, and he wouldn't even go in to celebrate with the father, because, and what was the reason? He says, I have worked for you all these years. I have obeyed you all these years. And yet when this foolish son of yours who spent your wealth with prostitutes comes back, you kill the fat calf. And yet you've never given me, the one who has been obedient. And you have never given me even a kid to celebrate with my friends. So once again, we go back. This guy, because he had been staying with the father, he now started to feel entitled. And that was not to say because he was perfect, because had we again taken him to the temple ground where Jesus was, and we say, he who has no sin cast the first stone, he cannot stand, because against the law, the bar is too high. You can't compete, you can't fare, and you know it. You have to lie in order to say that you are making it. So already he wasn't making it. The father obviously was showing him grace in certain things, and they were just a family. They were together, and that was what mattered to the father. But for him, it was more of, he was operating more as a slave than as a son. He was operating more as a worker who has to earn his keep. And again, we go back to the law, where we say, you have to do this to earn. Again, back to slavery. To being a son, if you're a son, you get, whether you've earned it or not, you just know that I am an inheritor. I have received the spirit of sonship, whereby we call Abba Father. I inherit without working. Okay? And that's grace, where God just says, my son, come take this, come receive that, come let me give you this. I've heard of people laughing when they're saying when you're in a gathering and then your mom is looking for you just so that she can call you, and then you go in private and then she gives you a few sweets and then she says eat, 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 and then after you've eaten then you go back and play. So this is sonship, whereby your parent is concerned about you and your parent is saying you inherit the inheritance even if you've not earned it. But as a slave, again we go back to I must do this to earn. So once you go back to being a slave, you're now keeping this whole law. And once you are now comparing you versus the whole law, you can't fare. You can't stand. You can't even throw the first stone. So why do you deserve anything? You don't, because the rule is if you're under the law, you have to keep all to get the blessing. If you break one, you break all. But what have we done? We have said, instead of comparing myself to the law, I'll compare myself to the next person, because it's easier to find someone who's weaker than me, someone who's doing worse than I am, someone that can make me feel like I'm doing much better, and so God has to bless me. And then we go back to that parable where God is saying the vineyard master invited people. First group at 8, first group, another group at 10, another group at 12, another group at 3, another group at 5 when the shift was ending at 6. And what does he say? He says, when he was inviting them, I will give you a day's wage. I'll give you a day's wage. And then the guys who came at the end, he says, I will give you what is due to you. And so when they now saw this guy giving the guys that had come at 5 a denarii, which is the day's wage, in their hearts, they were like, compared to this guy, I have done more. I have been here. I have worked. So it means I'm sure you will give me more. And yet when he came to them again, he gave them a denarii and he says, this is what we agreed. And these guys, I can imagine they must have gone home angry, incensed, instead of being grateful that they had found work. Instead of being grateful that they had found work and actually been paid, because there are people that make you work and then they don't pay you at the end of the day. But instead of being grateful of the grace that they had found that day, to be found at the work marketplace where they were just chilling and doing nothing, being idle, they had earned something that day. Instead of being grateful of being picked, instead of being grateful of having someone who would come to say, come work at my vineyard, they were angry, incensed. Oh my gosh, this guy gives a denarii, the same wage to me as the person that came at 4. How? Why? Oh my gosh. So, entitlement, once again. I am entitled to this because I've worked for it. That's the mentality of a slave. And Paul is saying, you have not been called to a spirit of slavery. You've been called to a spirit of sonship. When you're a son, there are times when you work in the field and you are not amongst the guys that line up at the end of the day to say, now give me my day's wage, now give me my day's wage. That's a slavery mentality. When you're a son, you can even work harder than all those guys because you know you're an inheritor of everything. So, what am I saying? Let us get rid of entitlement. Let us move from being slaves to being sons. Let us move from thinking that I deserve this. Let us move from comparing ourselves with the next person, whereby you think, because Sister Mary has been caught in adultery, therefore I'm better than Sister Mary. Therefore, I deserve to receive more. Therefore, I should be blessed more. And so when we don't receive that blessing, or when we see Sister Mary being given more blessings than us, we're thinking, if Sister Mary has received that big blessing, how much more me? No, our attitude should be that of realizing that everything we have, everything that we have been given, everything that we already have, that we're already enjoying, it's not because we deserve it, it's by grace. And when we realize that it's by grace, you're not pompous, you're not angry about what other people are getting. You're just grateful that God would just look at you and give you all the things that you already have. Instead of looking at how that person is doing and how they have been given that and you have just been given little, you are so grateful for what you have that you have no time even to look at what they have. So what am I saying today, guys? Let's be people of grace. Let's realize that it's by grace. When we fall from grace, it says that Christ becomes of no effect. When we fall from grace, Christ does not benefit us. It says we have gone back to I have to earn. And when the moment you're under I have to earn, you're failing because you can't stand and throw the first stone. Because you can't keep the law, you're failing as well. You also have so many sins. It's just that you're acting like you're better than the others. And so acting isn't going to get you anywhere in this life. Which is why so many people are so concerned now, because when they're looking at that lady that's in church that's doing everything, we think that they're the best of us. But the best of us against the law still fails. It says that the law fails the best of us. So now we're thinking, at least since they're doing much better than the rest of us, they should be blessed. But no, that's not the standard. That's not the rule. The rule is you keep the whole law, you're blessed. You break one, you break all. If you break the law, you're cursed. Simple. No need to complicate it. So I hope you guys got something from this. And I am so excited. I was also so excited to realize that, grace is the one that is the answer even to all these issues of entitlement, these issues of bitterness, these issues that, would make you, come to a point where you say, I'm going to take my own life because these guys, they refuse to look at me, they refuse to acknowledge me. And yet, it's not like you deserve to be acknowledged. It's just that God had mercy on you. God had grace on you and decided to look at you and to pay attention to you. So for me, that was really enlightening. And I hope it is enlightening to you too. Let us go back where we're not fallen from grace, but we're right where grace is, so that Christ is of effect in our lives. Otherwise, we'll continue to work and work and work and work and work. But we never quite get there. When we never quite get there, we can't get anything. And when we can't get anything, we get bitter. And then we lose it. And then we leave the church angry. At least if you leave the church, sometimes it's better because you can also find another congregation. But at times, you have people that actually say, I don't believe in God anymore because I did everything for nothing. So I hope you guys have a wonderful time ahead of you, and of just realizing that God is the one that is showing us grace, not because we deserve it, but because He's just good.
Everything will be alright.